Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of CNF Talks. Today, I'm going to be speaking to Anthony Woolley, who's Head of Business Development and Marketing at Onera, and their co-founder and CEO, Annie Ben-David, will be speaking at the Tokenisation Summit, which is going to be held in London on the 21st of November. Anthony, welcome.
Yes, thank you. Absolute pleasure to talk to you today.
Great to have you with us. Let's start perhaps by providing a little bit of background on tokenization of real world assets as they are widely described. I, how do you really define this? What are the limits of the types of real world assets that can be tokenized? Is there a limit?
In principle, no. And when you talk about, the potential for tokenization and the potential of the size of the market, the numbers can almost become meaningless. So the way we think about it is tokenization we now see being applied in a few key areas. And all of these are massive markets. So we're seeing tokenization in the world of capital markets now has really taken off in terms of liquidity and collateralization and optimization of collateral. So you could take that one topic and say, well, if you're talking about the repo markets, they're doing, I don't know what it is today, $9 trillion a day maybe. So you end up with very big numbers. Or you could talk about the potential to distribute tokenized funds, again, a massive market. But then again, when you then talk about tokenization of broader assets. So you talk about you're getting into private markets and alts. So you're talking about real estate, private equity, private debt, again, multi-trillion dollar markets. And the technology itself can be taken all the way down to more esoteric topics, things like oil paintings, racehorses, etc. Everybody's talking
Yeah,
about
yeah,
tokenizing. So
yeah.
it's enormous.
Yes, I heard about the tokenization of a cruise liner, or maybe no. I think it was a cargo ship not long ago. So it really does seem to have spread as a technique. And I suppose that the benefit of fractionalization of ownership is a key driver in many of these things, and the permanence of the record on the blockchain. But tell us, please, a little bit about what Onera does in this regard. What's your role within the market?
Yes, yeah, we play a very specific role that we focus on in the world of tokenization, which is that of connecting market participants.
Hmm.
So what you've seen is that in the last few years, everybody's been talking about tokenization for a while. And then institutions went away and built tokenization solutions. And we've now see those come to market. And we see a lot of supply of high quality assets that now large institutions are starting to issue in tokenized form.
Yeah.
The one of the issues and limitations, though, is has been lack of distribution. It's so once
Mm.
you've tokenized an asset, how do you get it to market participants across the globe? That's what
Yeah.
Onera focuses on. We're a technology company that gives regulated institutions software we call routers, which basically enable institutions to talk to each other peer to peer to distribute tokenized assets for investor buy side institutions to consume those assets, for digital custodians to do what they do. And we just focus on that. So we don't actually do the tokenization, right? We've got lots of these big institutions, digital
Yeah.
exchanges, etc., tokenizing. We play the role of connecting market participants. And we think that's been the key missing piece to really unlock this space and
Mm.
enable tokenization to have a market wide impact.
So you're essentially the infrastructure that enables the market to communicate and trade. Is that right? And distribute.
Indeed. Yep, that's a good way of summarizing it.
Yeah. But it's that clearly that's a key area to be. And I guess if you're well established and you do that there's something of a first mover advantage to being in the situation you are today. So let's just go back to the tokenized assets a little bit further. You know, we touched on some of the benefits, but what would you list as the key benefits of tokenizing assets generally?
Yeah, there's a few. I think it's important to understand that, and you mentioned some of the attributes of this technology and enabling you to have, call it a mutable, very reliable record of ownership of these assets.
Yeah.
But really, what's key is being able to establish then a digital chain from that tokenized asset all the way through to the ultimate beneficial owner. And this is something we don't really have in capital markets today. There are breaks along the way, whether that's in the primary markets or complexities in the secondary markets. So the core tokenization technology is one thing, but when you combine that with the digital chain connecting the asset through to the ultimate beneficial owner, and you have those digital rails, you get all sorts of optimizations. Some intermediaries will come out, others will be enhanced in terms of the role that they play, and it's really making this platform, this environment efficient. And it's also doing it in a way where you can instantly update records of ownership. So what does this mean? It means that unlike today in capital markets, where you agree an order for a transaction and then it has to go through clearing and settlement, etc., you have the ability, and we have the capability with our routers to orchestrate these transactions instantly. So you can update the record of ownership of an asset from seller to buyer and orchestrate that at the same time you're moving the money from the buyer to the seller, and orchestrate that instantly. And that unlocks sorts of really powerful opportunities in different markets.
Yeah, that's huge, isn't it? There's so much talk at the moment about in the securities market, in the TradFi securities market, moving from T3 to T2 to T1, and all of this seems like from a bygone era, in the sense that you're talking about instant settlement for these transactions.
Settlement when you want it, basically. Sometimes instant settlement can be incredibly valuable. So, for example, we're working on some major projects to help in the intraday repo market to facilitate the instant exchange of collateral and cash in intraday. Fantastic use case where you can have large institutions in the repo markets now actually just lend and borrow for a few hours and just pay interest for a few hours. Fantastic application of the power of instant exchange of collateral and cash, which is a broader theme that we're seeing now.
Yeah, astonishing, isn't it? And what about the legal framework? Has that caught up with what is a very novel technology?
Yeah, so when you've got innovation, a lot of people talk and stress about what's going on with regulation. Is it moving fast enough to keep up? These sorts of things. I think what we found is that there's always, at any moment in time, a regulatory environment in which you can and should operate, right? Regulation is a good thing. What we found is that we're working on projects that are going to production now under existing regulation and legal structures, under existing securities regulation and laws, etc. And we can do that today. What's happening is the regulation is continuing to move forward. And as it does, it will enable us to move progressively to completely native digital solutions. There are a few barriers to doing that straight away, but we don't see it as a binary thing where the regulation isn't right today and it will be tomorrow. Actually, you can operate within the regulation and take these systems to production. And over time, the regulation will evolve a bit and enhance and enable us to do it in a more seamless way.
So finally, what are the key trends or things that you expect in the future, the next milestone, if you like, in tokenization?
Yeah, we're at a really interesting moment in time. So the reality is that people have known about tokenization for a few years now, right? And when any new innovation comes along, there's a lot of noise. Everybody gets excited about the potential. Everybody intellectualizes its ability to transform financial services. The reality of actually doing it is something else. And so what we saw in the last few years is everybody got excited. Then everybody disappeared into their labs, for want of a better word, to work out what a technology really meant. And everything went quiet, right? What we're seeing now is all of that stuff, all of that innovation is coming out of the labs and going into production. So you've seen in the last year, large asset managers such as BlackRock and Aberdeen and Franklin Templeton start to distribute tokenized money market funds, which have given investors a way to get yield in more of a liquid way, in a way that you can more easily redeem those money market funds. So that's one theme. And this has really fired the starting gun and has really driven now this wave of all of these tokenization projects now coming into production, whether it's around money market funds leading into more broad tokenization of funds, whether it's in work we're doing on the intraday repo markets, which is now leading to broader transformation of securities finance, and ultimately those much bigger markets out there of real estate and private equity shares in pre-IPO companies, things like that is coming following that. So I think we're at a point in time, and the conference is well timed, because that transition we're going through from 2024 into 2025 is now next year scaling these tokenization solutions into the market, and our role of connecting the market to help realize that. So it's an important moment in time, a realization of an innovation and a technology people have been talking about for a few years. Now is when it's actually happening.
Yeah, exciting times. As you say, the challenge is scaling up. So for our viewers, if you'd like to hear more about these and related issues, do come along to the Tokenisation Summit 2024 in London on the 21st of November. More information available on the website www.citigroup.financial.com. Anthony, thanks very much for sharing those thoughts with us today.
Yeah, thank you. My absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me on today.